Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh, Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting every episode by just saying thank you. I feel so very blessed with this podcast, with the journey that's been on, with everyone that it reaches. My objective when I started was to simplify spirituality and guide people on their spiritual journey. And just the message I receive every week, it's clearly reaching the people that needs to. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I am an Akashic record reader, I'm an Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. And I love guiding people on the journey. I feel like we're being pushed to shine our light, to close out karmic cycles, to truly be our authentic selves. And I love guiding people to be able to do that. And with this podcast, I also get to interview and talk to some amazing, amazing people. I'm excited to have Jennifer Hill on this episode. And Jennifer, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Nims. It's such a pleasure to be with you and your audience today. I'm Jennifer Cahill. I am a recovering jerk, so nice to meet you. I've been through my own soul's evolution. I'm sure there's something in my Akashic records about that. When I was younger, why do I say that? When I was younger, I didn't understand people or myself, most importantly. So as I always say to people, it's kind of like you got a book on how to be a human being, and he got a book and she got a book on how to be a human being. But when I opened mine, it was blank inside. And so this literally led to decades of misunderstandings, broken relationships, until I began my spiritual path about 20 years ago. And it's been evolving ever since. So I built my first company, exited in 2018. And then after we exited that, kind of took a 180-degree pivot and started doing a series of TV shows with Deepak Chopra and Don Hoffman called Conversations at the Intersection of Cutting-Edge Science and Spirituality. And from there began building a tech company that is now my greatest passion and joy, which is called OptiMatch, or om.app, om.app. And what we do is we measure people's motivators and we align people based on motivators. So much as how I spent the first 20 years of my life trying to understand people and myself, our goal right now is to help others and to empower them with knowledge of self, knowledge of others, and to create greater harmony and coherence in all of our relationships.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Sounds, as I was talking about the current energy and kind of what's happening on the planet, I talk a lot about the energy switching from divine masculine to divine feminine. And, there's a lot to that is also, spirituality meeting science and so it feels like you've been on that journey it's like, because as humans, we love to see things. We love to be able to visualize it. And if we can't see it, a lot of the time we don't believe it. And it feels like your journey is partly also to guide people to be able to see things and maybe help them on their spiritual journey. Does that resonate?
Very much so. I feel like I had to go through the fire and walk through it so I could help others do the same. And so that's why people say, why human connection? Why is it so important? And I tell people out of survival. I had to study people out of my own survival, and I can see it's happening globally for so many of us. We're more disconnected than ever before, NIMS. We have, all of these wonderful devices and podcasts and Zoom and cell phones and so forth. And yet we're less connected to ourselves, less connected to others than ever before. So how do we reconnect? How do we reconnect most importantly to ourselves? I call this the golden triangle of connection, which allows for connection to self, allows for connection to others, which allows for connection to purpose. And the most important cornerstone of all of that is connection to self, because without that deep understanding of self, anything that we go out in the world to build, whether it's a relationship, a company, or family, is going to have a gap. It's that thing that you hear from so many people who feel like they've achieved it all. They have the family, they might have the successful company or the relationship, and yet something's still missing.
Yeah.
There's that certain itching feeling in our soul that says, what's missing? And what I've discovered personally and what I've been teaching others is that's our connection to ourself. And that's what fills the holes in the gap and allows for us to connect more deeply to our purpose and to one another.
Wow. And I mean, this year, all the clients I talk to, everything that everyone's been through, it really does feel like it's been about connection to self. Removing the layers, removing the programming, kind of so many soul contracts coming to an end. And I find what's happening is a lot of people are going through internal turmoil and really kind of discovering who they are. Some people are choosing to do the work. Some people are choosing to kind of look externally, and this is where the anger and the frustration comes from. So, is that something you're finding too, that this year's kind of been much more about self?
Yeah, this year, at the beginning of the year in January, I was doing a special meditation to clarify what was mine to do this year. What's my purpose this year, and how can I best serve humanity? And very clearly, Nims, I was told that my only goal this year was to connect as many people as possible deeply to themselves. And in doing so, provide them with tools for self regulation. I really find that that's the secret, as I often do a lot of talks around the world about cracking the code of human connection. I like to say that we don't realize, Nims, that we are putting the reins of our consciousness often in our amygdala, in that little fight or flight side of our brain, the reptilian brain at the bottom of our skull. And what we don't realize often is that our higher brains can't function. The ability for
Yep.
compassion, unconditional love, creativity, executive brain function literally cannot function until our lower brain, that reptilian brain, first feels safe. So, one of my goals this year has been to help put the reins of our consciousness back into our higher self, back into our soul self, our higher consciousness, so that way our amygdala is not running the show. Because that's why so many of us are fighting and in conflict. I promise you, the wars that are happening around the world are not coming from people's higher selves, higher
Yeah,
consciousness,
100%.
executive brain. It's
Mm,
coming from the you smash me, I smash you.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like a lot of it's coming is because the masculine us is in crisis. It's an identity crisis because the shift to divine feminine is all about higher self. It's all about your heart, kind of the love that you have inside. And we've been in the masculine era for so long. It's just an interesting switch. What are you finding out? In terms of, I know you do a lot of talks, and are you feeling that things are switching? Do you feel that when I talk about a switch from divine masculine to divine feminine, what are you feeling is happening on the planet right now that's causing such a? I feel like we're going to be in a chaos for a little while because the planet's switching. Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, I've been seeing this for about the last 4 years. I believe the catalyst for this was COVID, and that's where people got a taste. They got a taste of sovereignty, of intimacy, of deep time and availability for connection to self and family and others. And then people that was kind of got pulled out, and we all just went back to our regular, mundane, day-to-day things and went unconscious again. And where I'm seeing it is I actually see a complete disintegration of all systems. And I don't mean this in a scary way. I mean this in a beautiful death and rebirth sort of a way. We've all been there in our lives where we might have had what some might term a dark night of the soul. And just like I've been through my share, and I'm sure you have as well,
Yeah,
Nims, it can feel really scary. It can feel like,
and
oh
very
no.
lonely, right? Very
Yeah, very
isolating.
lonely. And I think that's why the more we all share candidly and authentically about where we're at, the more we're going to foster that deep connection that's going to weave that net and the fabric of the new world that's coming through. And I don't mean it in a cliche way. I mean that we are actually evolving our consciousness. All of our old systems are built on competition. God bless Darwin. He's we built our society and modern civilization on this idea of I smash you, I stronger, I better, I take what I want. Well, it turns out actually we got it wrong. We actually evolved to cooperate, not to compete. I just watched a beautiful movie this weekend about that I highly recommend to all of your listeners and viewers out there, called Wild Robot. Have you seen it yet, Nims?
No, I haven't. I'll definitely put it on my list.
Oh, it is beautiful. I am the queen of Pixar movies. Give me any animated movie. I'm so
I love
sensitive
it. Yeah.
consciously, but I love that, Raya and the Last Dragon. But to go to this movie, so the whole premise of the movie, it asks so many profound questions, Nims, about what is consciousness? Can AI or robots be consciousness? Why are we all fighting? And it's about this robot that, it's supposed to be shipped somewhere to be somebody's helper, and it falls off on this island where all there are animals. And so the robot has to reprogram itself to find out how can it be of service to the animals. And it can't understand why all the animals are fighting with each other and trying to take each other out, and that there's no peace on this island. And it's this beauty. I just got chills as I'm sharing it and remembering the movie. It's this beautiful tale evolving of when all the animals and the robot and they all learn to collaborate together, then all of a sudden a new peaceful society emerges that is a win for everybody. And I really think it's a beautiful hologram of what we're about to go through as humanity.
Wow. You know, a lot of these animated movies, I do actually, I know it's a side topic, but I feel like they're channeled. I feel like they have such a deeper message that they come from a space that there isn't the mind. It's just, you know, when you look at the deeper meaning, it's so, so powerful. And somehow they kind of communicate. It's interesting you talk about 4 years. You know, for me, I know there was a lot of human pain that went with COVID, but also for me, it was Mother Nature. You know, everybody was saying we don't have time to heal. We don't have time. We're too busy. We're too busy. And Mother Nature came along and said, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to send you all to the naughty corner. Give you time to heal. You have an opportunity to heal. You choose that. You do. You know, some people chose to heal. For me, it was you know, March 2020 was when my mentor, my friend Sidra Jeffrey, she left this realm in a fire. And for me, it was a time when, and she's exactly where she needs to be. She's now one of my spiritual guides, but I then knew that I was playing safe. So something activated in me at that time. And this is what I feel, that it was the beginning of this reset, because we all got that time. We all got that isolation. We all got that time in the naughty corner to either heal, begin this process, or, you know, and there's no right or wrong, by the way. There's no judgment. You know, everyone talks about ascension, shift from the third to the fifth dimension. I do feel like we're going through the shift, and everybody has free will. Everyone has a choice. Some people are going to stay and some people are not, and that's okay, right?
It's interesting that you bring up this idea of free will. If I may offer some positive resistance to that, Nims, it's been on
Sure.
my mind in prayer and meditation for the last week and in many conversations I've had. I have a theory that what if there is no free will? I was just on a call with an Ayurvedic astrologer 2 weeks ago, which kind of spawned this inquiry
Yeah.
for me into this idea of free will. And he literally pinpointed my birthday. I'd waited 6 months to meet this guy. He pinpointed my birthday and the birth time to actually 2 minutes before what was shown on my birth certificate. And
Wow.
he spent the full first half hour going through every life event I had to determine the exact time. And I'm sitting there scratching my head. He even said, I moved to Europe. I've been living in Europe now for 4 years. He said, oh, in a past life, you tried to move abroad and you died doing so. And it was part of your purpose that you had to move abroad in this life. And I'm sitting there just scratching my head going, does free will even exist? Like, how much choice do we have around our decisions, or is everything predetermined? Now, that's a slippery slope and a rabbit hole
Yeah.
that we can all go down. What I've been playing with since I had that reading is, what if, Nims, what if the only free will we have is to choose whether we react or respond to everything that was already set up for our soul school? Just imagine it. James Van Praagh talks about it in his book, Adventures of the Soul, that we all incarnate and come down here to soul school to get a PhD in abandonment and self-reliance, whatever it might be, right? And the way I kind of have seen it play out in my mind as I've been inquiring into this, Nims, is what if everything's predestined, you're going to marry this person, you're going to have this many kids or you won't, et cetera, et cetera, and challenges are going to come up, and you set those challenges at the soul level. Before you incarnated, you said, oh, I want this person to cheat on me. Oh, I hope my business partner betrays me. You know, we set this all up. And what I've now been seeing in my meditations is, what if, in choosing to respond rather than react to those moment by moment opportunities for growth, the more we respond, the more it's like beautiful green meadows and it's a path and things flow and we're in that flow state. The more we react, the more we're telling ourselves, oh, I need more challenges. I clearly can't learn this lesson, so give me more of that same
I love
thing.
it.
And so that's what's been really dropping in for me around free will in the last few weeks.
I love it. And, you know, it's interesting that the switch from reaction to respond, because as humans, primarily we react, right? Whether when we're attacked, we either defend or we attack back. But for me, I find when we do the self-care, when we do the meditation, then from that place of a solid base, we get to respond. And I agree. But it's also interesting. I mean, I have the conversation quite often. It's like, well, hold on, if our destiny's laid out, why do I need to take any action, right? It's,
Yes.
I can sit around and And it is an interesting one. So I really agree with I resonate with what you say, because this is what I've always believed is before we incarnate into this physical body, that's where our soul contracts come from. We as a soul, we need to experience unconditional love, breakup, pain, whatever it may be, and that's where the soul contracts are created. And then when we incarnate into the physical body, if we remembered that we were going to experience painful experiences or breakup or death or whatever that may be, then obviously we're not going to take the decisions to experience that. That's where the veil of amnesia comes in. And as we grow older and as we kind of do the work, the veil becomes thinner, and our awareness of what we chose to do. And it is interesting, right? I mean, it's kind of true. Well, so if the destiny, I believe that from a destiny perspective, from a soul contract perspective, a lot of the bigger things have been predetermined. And timing is a human thing, right? So when you, for example, when you meet the person you're supposed to, maybe that's something that free will influences, right? Maybe that's something that, and but the bigger events, like my spiritual awakening, it involved a friend at the time doing some dark magic on me. And I was very mental before that, and that opened me up to being spiritual. Those type of events, I really feel I had no control over. I mean, I can't control, but that was a soul contract. And that's sort of, it's an interesting concept, because you're right. I mean, if the major events in our life have already been predetermined, then why do we bother? Why do we just...
Free will, because we want to have that experience of thinking that we have choice and having a choice to evolve. Like, one of my favorite Kabbalistic perspectives is the idea that we choose our parents, that even if you had the worst parents or the best parents, that you chose them, so that way your soul could, it's like a curriculum has literally been laid out for us.
100%.
And that's it. I think that, going back to the free will, it's our choice in consciously, whether we respond unconsciously and we keep just reaction stimuli, etc., or if we choose to evolve our consciousness. I've gotten to the point now, Nims, where in most scenarios, if something happens, in that moment, I can drop in and I can actually feel what the soul contract was with me and with that person. And then in that moment, I drop into immediate compassion for me and for them, because not everybody has this perspective. And it's, as I often tell people, as much as I spend 2 hours a day in prayer and meditation, it doesn't mean I don't get angry or that you don't get angry, Nims. We still get angry. We still get triggered.
It's the human experience.
Yeah, but the biggest difference is how long we choose to stay in that frequency. Do we choose to let anger, bitterness consume us and to rule the choices that we make or that we think we're making, right? Or when somebody triggers us, how quickly can we use any of our spiritual tools? For me, I have 183 tools. I use them with my coaching clients.
You counted them. I love it.
I literally have, because I started writing a series of books called 101 Spiritual Tools, and that was 4 years ago during COVID, and I didn't even know I had 101 spiritual tools. And I sat down, and I was happy as a pig in shit, quite frankly, during COVID. I was meditating for 7 hours a day and doing all these deep work. And then Source told me, oh, it's because you have 101 spiritual tools. And I argued with Source. I said, I do not have 101 spiritual tools. And I sat there, and all 101 tools, I'm writing them down one by one. I was like, holy moly. And so that was 4 years ago. And I've since added whatever it is, 73 more, 72 more tools. And I'm just constantly learning. And so how consciously aware do we want to be, where we can have something that's triggering and then proactively choose to respond by utilizing one of the tools? And sometimes it might take you 5 or 10 minutes to get over something, 20 minutes, a day, a week. But the more we do and the more we evolve our consciousness, the more that we lessen the impact of whatever that stimulus reaction is and respond instead.
I love it. It's yes, it's a really interesting time. And I agree. I talk a lot about on the podcast that all we really control right now is the moment. How much, look at last few years, how much control do we really have of what the future holds? Who could have predicted COVID as an example? It's that. But if we really focus on what we want to experience in the moment, and if we experience the magic in the moment, the beauty in the moment, then what if the next moment becomes even more magical? Because that's all we really can. And Sidra, my mentor, she would used to say, when you get triggered, get excited. She used to think a little differently, because that's an opportunity to expand, to heal, to process something.
Yeah.
And if you really integrate whatever happens to you is happening for you, then maybe because the people I work to, I really kind of help them to change their question, because sometimes we're in victim mode, right? Why does this always happen to me? I knew it was going to happen. But if we change the question to, how is this serving me? How is this expanding me? What is it teaching me? What is the soul contract I've got with this person? Maybe we get a different answer. Maybe we can actually then integrate the lesson much quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that always trusting that everything is happening for our highest and best good.
I love it. I love it. So we talked about it, right? There's obviously a lot of turmoil in the world right now. There's a lot of people are kind of in some sort of internal crisis and some sort of shift. What would your advice be to somebody that's going through something right now? And what could you advise somebody who's feeling a real shift, maybe a dark night of the soul type experience? What would your advice to them be?
Go within, and for me, study Kabbalah. It's been between Kabbalah and transcendental meditation. I've been doing both and studying both for 13 years. I haven't missed a day of meditation for 13 years. And at the same time I started studying that and doing the meditation, I began studying Kabbalah. And I'd like to say that, you know how when you play a game, Nims, like if you're playing a board game or a video game, you need to know how to win at the game. Like otherwise you're just going to move little pieces
Yeah.
around a board. Or if it's a video game, you need to know AABB gets the star and saves the day. Well, I like to say that Kabbalah is the ancient wisdom that tells us how to win at the game of life. Like literally, oh, you want a soulmate? You want happiness? Like one of the precepts in Kabbalah is that when we're triggered by something, that again, it's an opportunity for growth, and that you say, oh my God, what was it? What a pleasure. That before you do anything else, you pause. They say, pause, what a pleasure. And a friend of mine who I brought to Kabbalah a couple of years ago, like she started studying with it and was going through a divorce. So she literally changed her ex-husband's name, who she's going through a divorce with, into pause, what a pleasure on her phone. So every
I love
time
it.
she would go to respond, it would be like, oh, pause, what a pleasure is calling me.
I love it, because that means you're not triggered, right? Because otherwise, when you're so that's changing the energy and the vibration. And so I'd love to know more about your journey. You kind of talked about kind of the work with Deepak Chopra, and he's obviously had a big impact. But just your spiritual awakening, kind of what triggered you to kind of connect and start with the 2 hours meditation, to do the deep work. Can you tell us more about your journey?
Yeah, so when I was about 23, exactly 20 years ago, this will be one day the opening story of my memoir, which will either be called Bitch in Recovery or The Recovering Asshole. So I haven't decided. If you have
I
any
was going to say, how do you pick? Those are both amazing titles.
I know, it's like, how do I choose? So if anybody has any comments, please put it in the comments chat. I welcome
Sure.
feedback for what the book title should be called, and this will be the opening story of that. And the whole book will be the before I realized I was a jerk and after I realized a jerk, which is why I spend the 2 hours a day in prayer and meditation. So before I realized I was a jerk, I thought I was a great person. I was dating this guy and he was handsome and everything was like going really well. And about 3 months into our relationship, his friend gifted him a personal development class in LA. And he and his brother go and do it, and they get breakthrough enlightenment. Well, sometimes you might have had a friend who has done some sort of big transformational work, and then they want you to do it. So literally every day, all I heard from my boyfriend was, you got to do this, you got to do this. And at the time, I still have a little bit of this in me, but it's definitely less than 50 years. If you tell me I have to do something, it's the quickest way to get me not to do something. So I was sitting there, arms crossed, you can't make me. Whatever
Right? You go, yeah.
I was in that life. So fast forward, this goes on for about 8 months of our relationship. And after the 8 months, finally one day I cave and I'm like, I'm just going to prove that this is a crock of crap. So I literally show up day one to the class, 150 people in a room outside of LAX. And I want to be sure everybody knows how I feel about this class. So the man who's co-facilitating it, he says, oh, before we get started, into this 3-day weekend class, anybody have any questions? My hand shoots up. He's like, yes, you out there in the Von bitch shirt. I literally had a shirt that was emblazoned in fuchsia that said Von bitch because I wanted to be sure that they knew
Yeah.
who I was. And so I said, yes. How would you respond to the fact that this, meaning the class, is a cult? The guy looks at me, rolls his eyes, gives me a little side eye and a chuckle, and says, if it is a cult, it's the best damn cult you'll ever join. Next question. So I
Nice.
am sitting there at NIMS and I am stewing in self righteousness. People are getting breakthroughs around death of loved ones and pain that they've caused themselves and others. And I'm just sitting there being what I call a judgy bunny. Like, you have problems and you have problems, and I have my crap figured out. Now, ironically, at that point, NIMS, I was bulimic. I'd been bulimic for 8 years, throwing up every day for 20 times a day. I hated myself. I was drinking a lot at the time, doing a lot of drugs, and I really just didn't love myself. I didn't even like myself. So we get to the end, the whole class culminates, and your friends come to celebrate this great transformation that you've had. So my boyfriend is sitting next to me, and his brother and his friend. And the woman who's co facilitating it comes up after the end to invite me to the next class. She says, are you going to do the advanced class? And I looked at her, I rolled my eyes, and I said, sweetheart, darling, it was stifling enough having sat in this room for the last
Wow.
3 weeks. Do you really think I would put myself through this hell again? And I look at my boyfriend who says, don't get me started. It took her 8 months just to do this one. And you know those moments, Nims, where it is literally life-altering moments. Now, who knows? Was there a choice point where I could have chose a different path? I don't know. This is the path I chose.
Yeah.
That was that moment of before and after. So I looked at my boyfriend. I said, this is an at-will relationship. You can leave anytime you want. And the woman looks at me and looks at my boyfriend and she says, can I be really straight with you? And I look at her and I said, sure, darling, you go ahead. You be really straight with me. She said, you are a nasty thing. You are one of the most powerful women I've ever met in my life. Except you know what? You are like Godzilla with a huge tail swinging behind you, knocking down buildings wherever you go. Except guess what? Those aren't buildings. Those are people whose lives you're destroying. She looks at my boyfriend and says, leave her. It's what she needs. And walked away.
Wow.
I literally knew my jaw hit the floor. I was like, huh? Me? What? Like, I thought I was a good person. I was like, I donate to charity. I help people. I was like, what is she even talking about? So fast forward, I go into my office the next day where I was already relatively successful. And there's about 26 people in the office. It's our morning meeting. And everybody's gathered there. And I kind of sheepishly look around the room and I say, maybe by any chance, have I ever been condescending or demeaning to any of you in the last year or so? And everybody kind of looks at their feed and the room goes dead silent until one woman who has no problem saying things how it is starts laughing uproariously and says, this was my old nickname, Jay Hill, you are only the biggest bitch we've ever met in our lives, and we have no idea how you're successful. And that was it. That was the catalyst for realizing that I have the capacity for great light and great dark. Now, it was still a whole other 10 years after that, that pulling back the layers of the onion and realizing, oh, what does being a good friend look like? What does being a good girlfriend, a good wife, a good daughter, a good human look like? And that's going to be the rest of my life's journey, is how can I be the most compassionate version of myself with others? And that requires being that person to myself first. The best advice I got when I was going through a divorce, ironically, that boyfriend and I got married. We're together 14 years. And after that, I left him. And when I was going through that divorce, one of my best friends for 20 years said to me, great feedback. She said, Jen, you deserve to find someone who will cherish you. Though first, you need to cherish yourself.
Yeah.
And that was the best advice I ever got, Nims. And that would be my advice for your audience.
I love that. Such a beautiful story too, right? But yeah, cherish yourself. Because I always talk about all the love you need is inside you, right? All the love, the joy. If you're looking outside, then you're looking for someone to complete you, right?
Yes, can I share a fun story about
Of
that?
course, yeah, of course.
It was Mastery of Love by the guy who wrote the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz, I think is his name.
Yeah.
So he wrote a lesser known book called Mastery of Love, and this is one of my favorite stories I often do in keynotes. So I want you to imagine that you have a magical kitchen. And in this magical kitchen, You can make yourself anything you want. You could have sushi, you could have gluten-free, vegan, carnivore, whatever your diet is, poof. All you need to do is think about it, and that magical kitchen, poof, is right there, and you can have whatever you want. So one day somebody comes along and knocks at the door and says, I'm going to give you the best offer ever, Nims. I'm going to give you pizza every day for the rest of your life, but in return, you need to let me put you down, control you, demean you, and do whatever I want to you. You would say, screw you, I have a magical kitchen. I don't need your stupid pizza. But let's imagine instead, Nims, that we have nothing, that we are starving, that we haven't eaten for days, weeks, months. We're barely hanging on by a thread. And then one day, that same person comes and they offer you pizza. And they say, I will give you a pizza a day, but in return, you need to let me control you, demean you, treat you like crap. You might consider taking that offer. And what Don Miguel Ruiz says is that magical kitchen is our heart, and that food is love. And if we can all realize that we have that magical kitchen, then we don't ever have to acquiesce or kowtow to somebody who's offering us something less than what we deserve. And it's one of my favorite stories I've ever read in a book.
Wow. So powerful. You tell it so well. Now, I want to go back to that story of you being on that course, because it's like when moments like that happen, how you respond really kind of defines you, right? As we talked about earlier, you could have got angry, but it's almost like a soul contract you had with that lady to kind of drop a bomb and walk away, because it's just, I love it. I love those kind of I don't know, sometimes we wait for these epiphanies, but it's like the small moments that become epiphanies, kind of, they just add to something, and you were open to having that conversation. I love it. And just, it reminds me of how I met Sidra. It's just, it was an ex, right? She went to a course with Sidra the weekend. She's like, oh my God, you have to meet her. And I was like, yeah, sure, But again, she guided me to Sidra, who kind of helped me to be, it was all a soul contract. I remember at an event with Sidra, my family were kind of know I'm on the spiritual path. They kind of sort of understand it. I remember my sister being there and kind of being on this event with Sidra, and on a break, she went to Sidra and she's like, Nims already has a family. Why does he need a soul family? And it was just like, and she explained, look, that, your blood family are there to expand you. They expand, and, your soul family, you get to choose. They guide you on a journey. But Sidra being Sidra, when we came back after, there's like 300 people at this event, and she was like, you know what? I had a great conversation at the break. Nims, who, is at the back, he's helping and stuff. I was talking to his sister and she asked a great question. And it's like then she changed the whole event, kind of like for an hour or so, talking about soul contracts and blood family. And, because the blood family, as you talked about, we pick our parents, but we pick our parents to expand us in some kind of way, not always to love us, right? Because our blood family have an ability to poke us in ways that maybe others don't. So it's interesting, this soul journey. It really kind of fascinates me, when we talk about destiny over free will. It's just such a beautiful conversation.
You know what you just made me think of, Nims, going back to that free will discussion, is, let's say, I've never thought of it in terms of this cataclysmic, life-changing event for me, right? Let's say that maybe I did have free will in that moment. Did I react? Did I respond? Let's say that I didn't go into my office the next day and ask people, what had I ever hurt their feelings or demeaned them at all? I wonder if free will is kind of like this, where I could then choose to stop playing the game at that point. And then all that would have happened is that another situation would have shown up, and another situation would have shown up, and another situation would have shown up. I like to think of it as the universe often gives us a little tap on the shoulder with our finger. Hey, Jennifer, I need your help with something. You're being a bit of a dick. Can you work on this? And then a little fist pump, like a, hey, nudge. You got this, a little nudge. And then all of a sudden your feet get knocked out under you. So I remember actually one of my Kabbalistic teachers, David Guillaume, talked about this, of different levels of a game, going back to that analogy of winning at the game of life, whatever you might imagine that to be, is that sometimes you need to hit a different level, and that every conflict or every obstacle we're encountering is the opportunity to reach that next level. And yet, if we don't learn the lesson, if we don't go within and say, fear, what are you here to teach me? person who betrayed me or cheated on me, what are you here to teach
Yeah.
me? And if instead we keep pointing the finger and blaming, we're just going to perpetuate that lesson over perhaps a whole lifetime. So I just was playing that out in terms of our conversation earlier around free will.
No, I love it. I love it. I agree. And the universe loves us, and this is the way I say it too. The universe loves us, but has a role to play to expand us. This is where the little nudges come, and if we could truly be present, the meditations, the silent, it helps us to really see those nudges. But when we miss the nudges, that's when they become little pushes and little shoves and little kicks, and it's like, and this is where sometimes we experience massive events, and it's just, could we avoid them? Maybe. Does it matter? Not really. It's actually how we respond and how we expand. It's just this journey right now. It's super interesting. And the thing I always remind people is we chose to be here as souls. So if you're going through something and you shift, it's because you chose to be here, because your soul needs to experience some amazing things to expand in whoever you are today, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's from loving you and accepting you from this place that allows you to start to truly expand and build. But yeah, I love it. I love it. It's just, I love having this sort of conversation around, kind of the soul contracts. And because right now, I really get the feeling that we've been pushed to look at our soul contracts, look at the people in our lives, and really ask, are these soul contracts complete? Are these people the souls that we currently have? Is it time? Are these soul contracts coming to an end? Do we have the people to hold and to expand us? I feel like a lot of people are being challenged, and a lot of soul contracts coming to an end. This is what, again, I feel that the cycle the planet is going through. Is that something you've seen too? That a lot of things are shifting even quicker now for people than maybe before?
Yes, and I think a lot of souls are going to leave this plane again. I think we're going to see another mass exodus of souls, not in a sad way. Like I lost my father this year. A friend of mine just very unexpectedly died 2 weeks ago. My greatest mentor, Dr. Mark Goulston, passed away December 31st of last year. And I feel like people's souls are being given a choice. You can choose to stay here and to go through one of the greatest evolutions of human experience, or you can choose to go and there's no judgment. And so I think we're going to see, unfortunately, just like COVID, where millions and millions of people died, I think we might be seeing something like that about to happen again.
Yeah, I agree. I feel a shift over the next couple of coming years, which is going to be, life as we know it is going to kind of shift in such a massive way. And it's not, again, it's laughing. It's not, why does it need to be scary? If we truly believe the soul is in this human body, death is one of the kind of but is it really death?
It's
Death of this
not.
physical body, it's the soul journey, right?
Yeah, we're just wearing a meat suit we call a human body. Bruce Lipton gave one of the best
Me
analogies.
too.
I love Bruce. Bruce, I've gotten to know him over the last couple of years. I love his work with the biology of belief. And one of my favorite things that Bruce said in an interview is Bruce said, it's like a television set. Let's imagine that you love watching Game of Thrones. Let's say that's your favorite TV show, right? Well, if your TV set breaks, does Game of Thrones still exist? Yeah, it does. Of course it does. So what do you need to do? You go get another TV set and then voila, you have Game of Thrones again. And that's what Bruce said is kind of like for us as human beings, is that our TV set is our body. And the story or the show of Nims or Jennifer might show up in a different colored TV set and a different how old or young, it's just a TV set.
Such a good way of looking at it. It's just reframing how we see things, right?
Yeah.
It's like everyone talks about change, and "Oh, I love change. I'm used to change." You really love change if you know what's coming. If you don't know what's coming, and when we talk about massive change, I get some people may be fearful of it, but nothing the planet, nothing. You're never going to be given anything you can't handle, and if it's your time, your time. But it's your soul journey, right? And for example, Sidra left this realm, 4 years ago, but she's probably, and I know she's touching more souls and guiding more souls in this realm than she could have humanly done. So who knows, right? When we start to look at things differently, of course, look, death is, you miss the human, right? Of course, and everyone handles it differently. But I just, yeah, I love being the student and just kind of watching the world and just, I'm here for it. I chose to be here, and I know that it's part of the fun of this expansion, right? Is being this human. So
And if I may add one more fun little analogy that came from an event I was out with Deepak a couple months ago, he just did his big Sages and Scientists event. And so at that event, they had this really funny conversation. It was like one of the last panels on, are we alone? Is there life out there? And they have the top scientists, people from Harvard, MIT, like top universities, scientists around the world. And I remember what one of the guys said at the end. He said, for all we know, we're somebody's experiment in their petri dish, and they're wearing a white lab coat, and we think we're having this profound experience as Nims, as Jennifer, having a podcast, but really somebody's just messing with us in a petri dish. I was like,
So
oh my
true.
God,
It's
so
so
funny.
true. And what if this is all a dream? And the whole different. It's just like, why do you need to take it so seriously? It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I love it. What if we are? Maybe we are, and who cares? Does it matter? I love this, and also, I loved your reaction. So we'd already recorded a podcast, and this has never happened to me before. Kind of, I couldn't find the recording. It's like really weird. And I was like, because I knew you're busy. I'm like, just I felt really bad because humanly. And your reaction was, okay, let's just reschedule. And I was like, that was really cool. That was because we both talked about it before we started recording. Maybe this conversation was needed for the collective more than who knows, right? But it's just
Surrendered about it. Most of the time, as long as I've ate enough, drank enough, had enough sleep, drank enough water, then meditated enough, then normally I'm responsive rather than reactive, but sometimes we're still human. And so most of the time I'm like, meh, who cares? And I used to be, oh my God, Nims, it's hilarious. Like even a decade ago, I used to freak out if somebody was a minute late for a meeting. If I was a minute late, my nervous system was like fried and I was freaking out and reactive. And all we can do is just regulate our nervous system. That's why I love meditation. I love heart focused breathing by Heart Math. I do it every day. And that's why I have the 183 tools. So that way, when stuff like that happens, I'm like water off a duck's back. Who cares?
I love it. I love it. So I'd love for you to talk about what you do, and if your voice resonates with listeners and they want to reach out, what do you do for the planet? How can people work with you?
Yeah, thank you, Nim. So two different ways is I do take on a handful of coaching clients at any given moment. So you can find that information at jennifercahill.com. I do keynotes and speaking around the world. And if you want to try our matching survey, it's free to download and get your free report. Go to om.app/survey, SURVEY, and you can answer our 20 simple matching questions and find out how you're motivated. If anybody out there runs a community or runs events, we just had a really cool use case with a pretty large organization that everybody's heard of using our software at their event to match everybody there at the event. So our goal is to connect 1 billion people by the time I die. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I have a dream to connect 1 billion people deeply, not just with one another, but with themselves. So that way we have happier, healthier, more expanded relationships.
Wow, I love that. 1 billion. And if you think about the ripple effect, this conversation maybe helps one person and that person kind of change. So it's just such a beautiful time. And I did that survey, and I love doing those type of things because they just give you insight into who you are. So I love that. I would I recommend it. I'd include it in the show notes for sure. And your details, please do reach out. I always love kind of closing out a conversation by asking any guest, I love this conversation. But if you had any final bits of advice or affirmations or journal prompts, because the conversation is great, reaching out, completing that survey. But I love people to go deeper on this journey. So any journal prompts or any affirmations in your heart that you'd love to share?
Yeah, one of my favorite things that one of my teachers, Arthur Samuel Joseph, taught me is to look at yourself every day in the mirror, Nims, to say, I love you. I love you. And I encourage you to ask the universe. I often will journal with God about my dreams, with the universe, whatever you want to call it. I'll put in the journal, Dear Universe, what would you like me to know today? Dear Universe, help me to interpret this dream. Or one of my favorite things that I referenced earlier that one of my teachers, David Guillaume, taught me is to ask your fears every day. Fear of being alone. What are you here to teach me? fear of, the world ending. What are you here to teach me? Fear of not being enough. What are you here to teach me? Or failing, or never finding my soulmate. Whatever that is, just be in a state of inquiry. And I find that the more we go inward and go inward, the greater the wisdom we have and the greater our capacity for resiliency.
Wow. I love that. Love that. Sometimes such simple questions, right? And can, if you're open to the magic, give you such profound information. So I love it. I love it. Jennifer, I love this conversation with you. I could talk to you for hours. It's just the soul journey is such fascinating. I love it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sending so much love and light out to the universe. We talk about whatever the planet's going through, the shift. Embrace it. Don't be scared, because again, the universe is not going to give you anything you can't handle. Just be here for it. Sending so much love and light out. Thank you, thank you. And Jennifer, I'm going to hand over to you to close us out.
My wish, my intention for each and every one of you is that you find that spark of light within yourself. And as you nourish that spark of light by cultivating unconditional love, compassion, and the ability to love and cherish yourself no matter what you're going through, that you too are able to light that spark of light for other people and to see it within one another.
Wow. Just letting that sit for a moment. Thank you. Sending you so much love.